So let's go. I have now pressed the seam allowance open on that little connection piece. You see it's flat. And now I'm meant to attach it to the sides. So obviously, as I thought I was smart and I put a pocket here on the side, here it has one benefit. The benefit is that I actually didn't sew on the second piece of webbing. I just put it around and shoved it down. So if you're scared that your machine can't do this here, then you could purposefully on either side of the satchel put a pocket on top, so that you just can shove it in a pocket and then top stitch over here. So that's up to you, but obviously for me, as a result, I have lost the upper pocket. I can only use the lower pocket if I so wanted. And up here I need to make sure that I can still pass with the seam allowance that we will need in a few minutes when we connect this to the inner lining bag. So from here to here are now 2 centimeters. I sadly can't have more, because if I have more, then this piece of webbing disappears in the pocket, so that's not working. But 2 centimeters is just fine, because 1 centimeter is the seam allowance, and then I still have a centimeter room before the webbing starts. So let's sew that on here. So if you now find it hard to get the satchel into the machine, then you use the so-called free arm of the machine, meaning you're taking this bit out and just put the whole satchel over the free arm, and then you have more access. It's easier. So let's just stitch underneath here, and then if you find you cannot lift the foot anymore now, you can use the so-called high rise. So if I have the lever here, see, you can't see that properly now, but if you push the lever really hard upwards, you get quite some more lifting of the foot. So, and then we stitch this on. Again, it should be done in black, but I do it in the brown that you can see it. Make sure you're not hitting the D-ring when you stitch across here now. That's the last thing you need, is that your needle hits the D-ring. So my machine is quite happy to go through the jeans and through the 2 layers of webbing. I hope your machine will be the same. So we stitch it on there, and I will also just stitch a little bit across on the actual jeans. I think I will just copy this already existing line a bit and put my needle on the threads, and I just go a bit across here that piece of webbing holds, because I tend to fill my bags just a bit, so I don't want it to be delicate and fragile exactly where it holds the straps. So that's this side in. Let's clear a bit the threads. So now we go on the other side. This side, this is how it should have been without fancy pockets in the way. So here you are. You have got the piece. You make sure that this connection with its seam allowance is underneath. You know you need to go in the middle of the width, and you know you need to leave 2 centimeters to the top, and then you sew it on. Again, I suggest you do a rectangle with a cross in between, like you see it very often. That means you sew across, you stop before you fall off, then you go down. That's now has a lot to do with convincing the satchel to do what you want. That's always a bit like that with bag sewing. It gets a bit heavy-handed. You come down just before you fall off. Then don't go with the back here now. Just turn the bag the whole way around so that you can go straight on. It's just easier for you to see where you are. Then you go straight on across before you fall off. and then you come back up. Just tidy up my threads. Here we are. You come back up. You come back up, and then you go down and eyeball it to the other corner. Here we are. One more. There. Then you come back up the side. And then, are we up? One more. Let's see. Yeah, there. And then we go down the other corner. And again, put the back so that you can go straight forward. That you don't have to use the back here. So you just see better. You can eyeball better. So, and then we are reaching that diagonal. And then we put the lever up, and for one last time we go up and down that little side here to anchor the stitch properly. Here and a bit back and a bit forth, and then we have it sewn on. I will show it to you in a wee second. Let me just get the threads away. Here we are. So this is what I have done here. See, that normally holds the best, and then we have this sewn on that should hold. So what we do now is, now we need to sew the flap on. So you know that the flap here is on the front of the bag, and it attaches to the back. So if you look into the bag, it's here on the back, and then you put it equally either side of the back seam allowance, right? So basically, where the seam is on the back piece, between the back piece and the side piece, it's just sticking over a tiny bit either side from there. So let's pin that in. And then we, I would say, we leave that open here. We, with the free arm or with a normal sewing machine, again, whichever you prefer, it doesn't matter. You put your needle down and you sew the flap on. With your centimeter seam allowance, go all across. And to this side. So you might have spotted at the beginning I didn't have my lever down because it felt already down because it was so full under the foot. So my stitch will not have been very sturdy. So I just go back and do that again. Here, and I make a point of putting the lever down this time. And we just do that beginning bit again. Here you are. And now we are good. Take that out. So now we are connecting this bag with its lining. There was a little there to here, which I'm just taking out. So the way we do that is we need to get it right now with the proportions. So this is the front of the bag. So we put it in so that the patch pocket is on the back, and we put the whole bag in the lining bag, okay? Right in the lining bag. So, and then you need to make sure you're putting these buckles downwards. You really don't want them in the road. And then you need to pin the the sides correctly with the seam allowances so that the seams of the lining bag meet the seams of the outer bag. I hope you can see that properly. So, and then I'm using, I don't like the clips move too much for me. I'm using the big pins. You see how much bigger they are. These are curtain pins, and they're the same prim glass-headed pins. See, they're the same prim pins, but one is a dwarf and one is a giant. You see them here. They're quite expensive, but you buy one packet and you have it forever. And on these occasions, these pins come out. They either come out on really fluffy, thick chenille curtains where the normal pins would kind of just disappear, or they come out when I'm pinning bags, because the normal pin would bend very quickly and it's just not heavy enough for the job. And then we come to this side. And again, we make the seams meet on the side, put the pin in, and on the other side of the seam, make sure the buckles are down of the straps, and then you pin that here. See, the clips might just kind of pop off now. So you have got the outer bit of the bag inside the lining, and obviously the top flap as well inside the lining. And then when you are stitching this together now, then be sure that you are stitching the back side where you have just sewn the flap on. Make sure you're stitching it from the inside, not from the outside, because you want to know where the line is that you stitched for the flap, because you want to repeat this line, okay? That afterwards it doesn't look funny from behind the bag. So let's start with that. And I'm just putting some additional pins in. Obviously now that goes through several layers of jeans. So this last step is a little bit heavy on your hands. So I hope your hands are not too sore so they can handle the power. And then I start with the back. Never mind the sides and the front. I just start sewing that back line again that I've just sewn. And also, obviously, we need to what they call birth the bag in the end. So we're sewing the back, we're sewing the sides, and when we sew the front after, we leave the middle part of the front from here to here where my two fingers are, we leave it open. Otherwise, we have no opening to push the bag through. So let's go. So the same line again, and with all the pins we have made sure that we actually do grab the lining, which is sitting behind the bag and behind the flap. So let's go the same line here as good as we can. There, and then because you have a big stitch and a big tension and a big needle, you can go very slowly over the pins. All right, that can only be done with a really big stitch, because then the likelihood is much bigger that the stitch physically jumps over the pin. Whereas the really short stitch, like a 2.5 or a 3, might hit the pin much more likely. So then we go to the end here, and then we can already go to the front. We have our pins in. That looks okay. So we continue to the front. And obviously where my left hand is here, there's the buckle right behind. So still be really careful, not that the buckle had moved and is in the way after all. So be very careful because you can't see it now. So here, make sure you open all the seam allowances that you can see. And here you push, you can't see that now, you push seam allowances out the road. So you make it as flat as you can. And then you continue stitching to the front. Continue stitching to the front, and once you have stitched about a third into the front, you stop. You stop, go back and forth a few times, and that's this side done. See here, I show it to you again. So this is our front, and you just stitched to here. You came, you had done the sides, so now we can pull these pins out that we don't forget them before we turn over. And you have stitched all along the back, where we now restart to go over the sides on this side and into the front. So now we are using that free arm again. You see, I'm just putting the back onto the free arm, and then it's much easier. But I couldn't do that when I did the back, because it was more important to me that I repeated that particular stitch run that we had when we put on the flap. So 1 2 3, 1 2 3 back, and then now let's stitch this. And again, each time you come to seams, make sure that some seams go to the front, some seams go to the back, that you keep the bulk as low as possible, that not all seam allowances go over to the same side, because that first will be really hard for your sewing machine to get over, and second, it will just give too much bulk. So usually the seam allowances of the side bits go not towards the side bits, but towards the big panels, if that makes sense. And that lets you reduce bulk. So I'm now coming onto the front, and again I will be stitching about a third in. Here we are, and then I will go back and forth, and I hope I have left myself enough of an opening. So see, that's my front. I have stitched to here, and I came over from here and stitched to here, and now the whole back needs to go through that opening. So best of luck to me. I don't know if I have left myself enough room. So what I do inside, I kind of roll up that back a bit to a long sausage in the hope I get it through. Yeah. So next time I leave myself a bit more room, that's already for sure. I hope I'm not popping my sides. Well, I seem to be just lucky. It just seems to be okay. It's always a bit of a wrestle. Oh, seem to have popped a little bit, but we will fix what we have to fix after. The jeans is a heavy fabric, and all those layers and interfacings, I think I have underestimated that a bit, but we will just see what it does. So, okay, here we are. Look at that. So that's our bag, and that's our lining come out. That's our flap. Just show that you see that here, and that's our sides. And now we put the lining inside. So now you see what happened. These seams actually survived, but the middle seam popped open a bit. So I just need to find a solution now to fix that. Give me a little second. I will just fix that and sew that together once I have my thread back in the needle. So if the thread doesn't want to go in, you just cut diagonally the thread, and then you get a bit of a sharper front. Here you are. So I just need to fix that a little bit here on my bag. Make a new seam. 2 seconds. Obviously you wouldn't normally have a seam there. That would be one piece of fabric. It's just that I used every single bit of that blouse, which turned out just a tad too small to be the lining. So don't underestimate. There's so many pieces needed. You can't really use a small blouse from one of your children or something. You would need to use 2 or 3 little blouses then, okay, to get all the pieces out of it. So see here, nobody knows, nothing can be seen. So then we put that all inside, and because we had the inner bag on the bottom, when we put the outer bag in the lining bag, we now have it on the back as an extension of the flap, just like we wanted. See here. And now what we need to do is we need to press that down really, really well. And then we need to sew all the way around it. So I now go and press, and I meet you again to do that last round of stitching, and then put the strap, the shoulder strap on as well. 1 little second. Now that's me back with my well pressed bag. Here you go. So a couple of things. We have obviously also pressed the bag really well, the back. So normally I meant to stitch all the way around now, top stitch all the way around the back, but I had a good look at it, and I really like how the satchel flap comes out the back, and it's really thick here to stitch. And I think even if I would have stitched in a dark blue or something to make it as invisible as possible, I just think that stitching line would kind of destroy the design of it, destroy the really elegant look of it. So I have decided that the top stitching here on the back, that before the flap starts, is not mandatory, because the lining inside goes down anyway. So I don't think we need that stitching. I'd rather omit it to keep the elegant look, because if a stitching line is just a little bit squint, it kind of looks homemade straight away, and I really didn't want that with this bag. So I would say we are needing to stitch from the side beginning. Let me see that you see that. From the side beginning all the way around the front, because we're also closing the turning hole with that, to the end of the side. So that is a mandatory stitching, because otherwise the lining would bulge up from the inside. But the back run I would leave alone. I really wouldn't stitch. I think that would just destroy all your hard work. What you need to consider though is, when I have pressed the front, I have made really sure that all the distances here from the zip to the upper edge of the bag are the same. Because if that's squint, again, that can look unelegant quite quickly. So do your utter best that you get the distances the same, whatever the distance is, but it needs to be the same. And that kind of shows you already why I didn't want to put that press in magnet at the beginning for the closure, because there's so many areas where small little things change. I really want to do it at the end, and I will do it with you just after the stitching, the top stitching here. So again, we need our free arm. See, I'm putting it onto the free arm, and whilst you can't see what I'm stitching, because today I have nobody to film me, so you have to make do with me on my own, I will show it to you right afterwards, okay? So we go down with our needle. You go near the edge, but not too near, so you don't fall off, okay? So 1 2 3, 1 2 3 back. See, and now it buckles a little bit, and that is okay. You just then use the hand wheel and pretend it's a hand crank until you come into easy areas again, and then you can switch over to the motor again, okay? So that's absolutely fine. Don't force the motor, don't kill the motor of the machine. There's no need for that. So, and then we're coming onto the front piece, and you're just pulling the pins as you go, and you make sure you are folding the lining nicely under the front, so that when you look directly from the front onto your bag, then that you don't see lining. You don't really want to see lining there, peeking out from the inside. So always make sure your needle is down before you readjust the next bit, because if the needle is not down, it will jump and you will have zigzags in your stitching. There, nearly there. I will show it to you in a wee second. So the last bit. So it is a bit difficult to run behind the webbing that holds the D-ring, the rectangular D-ring, but we just need to have a little word with the machine that it does what we want, and then it will be fine. So we're coming to the end here. You go to the seam where the side bit stops, and then you go back and forth a few bits, 3 times, and then you're good. So I show you that. So see here, we stopped here. So you basically stop where the binding of the flap stops. See, this here is the beginning of the back bit. And the beginning of the back bit is at the same position as where the binding stops of the flap. And that looks pretty good. That looks quite elegant. Okay. And then here I went back and forth to lock it. That's my front. And then here on the side, again, the binding more or less stops with where the back starts. I have a few loose threads here, so they go on that occasion too. So that's the back as such finished. So now we just need to finish the strap. We need to finish the strap. And what you can also see here now is that I have put my zip on the outer flap relatively high up, because I found that the pocket inside was quite deep and I didn't want it to collide with the sides. But looking at it, actually we need to consider, I think I just got away with it, because if the bag stands, let me put that a bit higher that you see that better here. If the bag stands and I see the side bits here, see the buckles, then the zip shouldn't have been any higher than that. So it's just okay, it's just borderline. But ideally, it could have well been about 1 inch lower when you look at the total bag. Here you go, here you see the bag, okay? So it's just okay, but if it would have been any higher, it wouldn't have been as nice anymore. So we need to consider that if you look here, that's your back seam now. And if you look, it's from the back seam, it's 6.5 centimeters from the back seam. It starts here. And its highest point is only 5 centimeters from the back seam. So maybe the next bag, I would have my highest point, say 6 or 6.5 from the back seam. Obviously, that would be 7.5 from before it's stitched together, including the seam allowance. And then maybe just parallel come 1 inch further down. Do you know, you always need to make a couple of bags of each until you fully suss it out. But I think I got away with it. It's not too bad. So now, just to remind you, we had attached the strap to the adjusting slide.